People usually ask what happened to a man before they decide whether he deserves kindness. You didn't. The stranger's words made Hannah Miller pause with one hand still resting on the glass door of Miller Street Diner. Rain whispered against the windows behind him, silver beneath the parking lot lights. It was 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before closing, and Hannah had already counted the register twice. Her feet hurt. Her father had called an hour earlier asking whether she could pick up milk on the way home. The coffee in the last pot had gone cold, and the man standing beneath the narrow awning looked like someone who had nowhere else to be. His brown coat was worn at the cuffs. His jeans had seen better years. Rain clung to his dark hair, and a tired shadow covered his jaw. Hannah guessed he was homeless. She was wrong. His name was Ethan Cole, and less than 3 miles away, inside the safe of a luxury hotel suite, rested a Swiss watch worth more than Hannah earned in a year. By morning, financial newspapers would mention one of his companies. By Monday, hundreds of employees would wait for decisions carrying his signature. But Hannah knew none of that. She only noticed that he was cold. "I didn't ask what happened to you," she said. "I asked if you wanted coffee." Ethan stared at her. For 6 days, he had worn second-hand clothes and walked through parts of the city where nobody recognized the billionaire whose photograph appeared in business magazines. He had expected suspicion, pity, maybe kindness performed carefully enough to earn something later. He had not expected Hannah. "I can't pay," he admitted. Hannah glanced toward the empty diner. Red vinyl booths. A humming refrigerator. 3 slices of apple pie beneath a glass cover. Nothing glamorous. Nothing staged. Good thing I said coffee and not a mortgage. Something almost forgotten moved across Ethan's face. A smile. Hannah unlocked the door she had just locked. 5 minutes, she said. Then I really have to close. He followed her inside. The bell above the door gave a tired little chime. Hannah poured the remaining coffee into a thick white mug and slid it across the counter. Ethan rapped, both hands around it. "It's cold," she warned. "Still better than the rain." She studied him for half a second, then placed one of the apple pie slices beside the mug. "That wasn't part of the offer. It'll be thrown away. So this is charity?" Hannah looked at him then. Really looked at him. There was something unusual in his voice, something too measured for the man his clothes suggested. "No," she said softly. "It's pie." Ethan lowered his eyes. That answer unsettled him more than generosity would have. He had spent years surrounded by people who calculated value before offering anything. Hannah had given him coffee without asking his name and pie without asking for gratitude. "I'm Ethan," he finally said. "Hannah." She wiped the counter while the rain strengthened outside. Neither spoke for a while. The refrigerator hummed. A clock ticked above the register. Somewhere beyond the windows, tires whispered across wet pavement. It should have felt awkward. Somehow it didn't. Ethan had begun this strange experiment because he wanted to discover whether anyone could care about him without knowing his fortune. Sitting beneath the faded diner lights, watching Hannah quietly stack clean cups, he believed he had finally found the perfect person to test. What he did not understand yet was that Hannah Miller was not the one being tested. By 6:15 the next morning, Hannah Miller was awake again. Not because she had slept enough, but because ordinary life rarely waited for anyone to feel ready. Her alarm buzzed across the nightstand in her small apartment, and she reached for it before it could wake the neighbors through the thin wall. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street below was still wet, reflecting the pale blue light before sunrise. Hannah sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, rubbing the ache from her feet. Then she stood. There were bills clipped beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. Rent, electricity, car insurance for a car that spent more time needing repairs than carrying her anywhere. Beside them was a handwritten list from her father. Milk, coffee, oatmeal. Do not forget your own breakfast. The last line made her smile. At 68, Robert Miller still believed his daughter could somehow forget herself entirely while remembering everyone else. Hannah poured cereal into a bowl, checked her bank balance on her phone, and quietly moved $20 into an envelope marked bakery. It was not much. Some weeks it was 10, some weeks nothing at all. But the envelope had been there for almost 3 years. Hannah wanted a place of her own someday. Nothing fancy. 6 tables, maybe 8. Warm bread in the morning. Cinnamon rolls on Sundays. Coffee strong enough to make people forgive Mondays. She had even drawn the sign once on the back of an old diner receipt. Miller and Main Bakery. She kept that receipt folded inside a kitchen drawer where dreams could remain safe from overdue notices. By 7:30, Hannah was carrying groceries into her father's modest house 12 minutes away. Robert was already sitting at the kitchen table pretending he had not been waiting for her. "You bought the expensive coffee," he said. "It was on sale." "You always say that." "Because things are frequently on sale." He looked at her shoes, then at her face. "You worked late." Hannah placed the milk in the refrigerator. Someone came in before closing. Good tipper. She thought of Ethan holding the cold coffee with both hands. Not exactly. Robert smiled. Then he must have been interesting. Hannah ignored that and opened the curtains. Sunlight entered the kitchen in a thin golden line. She made her father oatmeal, fixed the loose cabinet handle he had promised to fix himself, and listened while he complained about the local baseball team as though their disappointing season were a personal betrayal. It was ordinary, comfortable, real. By 9, she was back at Miller Street Diner wearing the same black shoes and a clean pale blue uniform. Plates clinked. Bacon hissed on the grill. Someone wanted more syrup. Someone else insisted his eggs were too soft. Hannah moved between tables with practiced calm, remembering coffee preferences, grandchildren's names, and which regular customer needed the check early to catch the 8:45 bus. Nobody watching her would have guessed she had slept barely 5 hours. Nobody would have noticed the bakery envelope. That was how Hannah preferred it. Her dreams did not need witnesses to be real. Near noon, she carried 2 plates toward booth 6 and glanced automatically at the window table from the night before. Empty. She stopped for less than a second, then kept walking. "Expecting somebody?" asked Denise, another server. "No," Hannah answered too quickly. Denise smiled but said nothing. Hannah told herself the stranger had probably found somewhere warmer. She hoped so. That should have been the end of it. At 12:23, the bell above the entrance chimed. Hannah looked up. Ethan stood inside the doorway in the same worn brown coat, his hair still untidy, carrying no bag and offering no explanation. Their eyes met across the crowded diner. For the first time that morning, Hannah forgot what she was carrying. Ethan gave her a small, uncertain smile. "Any chance the coffee is warmer today?" Hannah looked at him for a long moment before setting the plates down at booth 6. Then she reached for a clean white mug. No promises. By 12:30, Ethan had learned something his 7-day experiment had never accounted for. Being unnoticed was exhausting. Hannah set the white mug in front of him and filled it from a fresh pot. Steam curled between them. "Better?" she asked. Ethan took a careful sip. "Much. That will be $2.25. He looked up. Hannah held his gaze for exactly 1 beat before the corner of her mouth lifted. "Relax. I am kidding." Ethan smiled, but something inside him tightened. $2.25. In his real life, he approved expenses larger than this diner's yearly revenue without blinking. Here, he could not even buy coffee without breaking the identity he had created. "I can work for it," he said. Hannah glanced toward the kitchen. "Can you wash dishes?" "I have washed dishes." That was not my question. He almost laughed. "Yes, I can wash dishes." She pointed toward a stool at the counter. "Drink your coffee first." Nobody should negotiate employment before caffeine. Ethan sat down, and Hannah disappeared into the lunch rush. Watching her was strangely different in daylight. The night before, she had seemed like a quiet woman closing an empty diner. Now he saw the machinery of her ordinary life. She remembered that Mr. Patterson wanted mustard but no mayonnaise. She brought an extra napkin before a mother with 2 children needed to ask. She noticed an older customer counting coins and quietly removed the charge for his second cup of coffee. Nothing was dramatic. That was what stayed with Ethan. Her kindness had no audience. At 1:15, the crowd thinned. Hannah returned and placed half a turkey sandwich in front of him. Kitchen mistake. Ethan looked toward the pass-through window. "It looks exactly like something someone deliberately cut in half." "Then our kitchen makes unusually neat mistakes." He did not challenge her. He ate. For the first time in years, lunch did not arrive beneath a silver cover or during a meeting. It came on a chipped ceramic plate while a ceiling fan clicked overhead. He liked it more than he wanted to admit. "So," Hannah said while refilling the sugar containers, "are you passing through?" Ethan had prepared answers for questions like this. Lost job. Bad year. Needed a fresh start. Simple stories built from believable pieces. Yet with Hannah standing there, every prepared sentence suddenly sounded cheap. Something like that. She nodded. No interrogation followed. That is it, he asked. What is it? You are not going to ask where I sleep? What happened to my family? How I ended up here? Hannah stopped arranging the sugar packets. Would you answer honestly? The question landed softly. Ethan looked at the coffee. Probably not. Then why would I make you lie? For several seconds, he said nothing. Hannah returned to her work as if she had said nothing remarkable. Ethan watched her move away, disturbed by how precisely she had found the one weakness in his plan without knowing there was a plan at all. 6 days earlier, Ethan Cole had been standing 42 floors above downtown, listening to his attorney explain the final details of a relationship that had ended with lawyers discussing property before either person discussed heartbreak. That evening, his closest friend, Daniel Mercer, had found him alone in his office staring at the city. You think everybody wants something from you, Daniel had said. Most people do. Maybe because you never meet anyone who does not already know your net worth. The sentence stayed with him. By midnight, frustration had become an idea. By morning, the idea had become a test. Ethan booked a modest room under another name, bought used clothes with cash, left his phone with Daniel, removed his Swiss watch, and gave himself 7 days. 7 days without assistance, without reservations, without the invisible doors money opened before he reached them. He told himself he wanted truth. But beneath that was something less noble. Ethan wanted proof. Proof that somewhere existed a woman who would choose him when there was nothing impressive to choose. He had imagined himself observing people, measuring reactions, staying safely detached. Then Hannah opened a locked diner door in the rain. You are doing it again, she said. Ethan blinked. She was standing across from him. Doing what? Thinking so hard your coffee gets cold. He looked down. She was right. Hannah reached for the pot. Another? I still cannot pay for the first one. Then you owe me. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. She pointed toward a wooden chair near the window. One leg leaned at an angle. You said you could work. 10 minutes later, Ethan was kneeling beside the chair with a screwdriver Hannah had found beneath the register. She watched him tighten the loose brace. You have done that before. I told you. You also hold a screwdriver like someone who has never had to find one in a junk drawer. Ethan froze for half a second. Hannah noticed. She noticed everything. But she only smiled and carried the repaired chair back to the table. Debt reduced to 1 cup of coffee. What about the sandwich? Interest. Ethan laughed. A real laugh this time. Hannah looked at him, surprised, then laughed too. It lasted only a moment, but something changed in the space between them. Ethan had come into the diner believing he was studying Hannah Miller. He did not yet realize that every hour beside her was quietly revealing Ethan Cole. On the third afternoon, Hannah stopped pretending Ethan's return surprised her. At 12:20, she placed a clean white mug at the window table before the bell above the diner door even chimed. When Ethan walked in 3 minutes later, he noticed it immediately. You were expecting me. Hannah poured his coffee. I was expecting someone who owes me labor. I repaired your chair. 1 chair. You have expensive taste in sandwiches. Ethan smiled and removed his worn coat. What is the sentence today? Hannah pointed toward 2 cardboard boxes beside the counter. Those need to go into the storage room. He carried them without complaint. The next day, he tightened a loose faucet handle. The day after that, he helped Frank, the cook, move a delivery of flour when the supplier left it near the wrong entrance. Nobody officially hired him. Nobody formally invited him back. Somehow, Ethan simply became part of the diner's afternoon rhythm. Hannah never gave him cash. Ethan never asked. She gave him lunch, coffee, and small jobs that allowed him to accept both without feeling like a charity case. That detail stayed with him. She did not simply help people. She protected their dignity while doing it. On Friday, Ethan arrived to find Hannah wrapping 2 sandwiches in brown paper. Those for me, he asked. Your confidence is improving. She placed them in a bag. 1 is yours. 1 is for Mr. Patterson. He missed lunch. Ethan knew the elderly regular. He usually sat in booth 4 and complained affectionately about baseball. Where does he live? 3 blocks east. Hannah glanced toward the crowded tables. I usually drop food off after work, but he has a doctor appointment this afternoon. Ethan picked up the bag. I can take it. Hannah hesitated. It was the first time he had seen her hesitate before accepting help. You do not have to. Neither did you. Their eyes met. Hannah slowly handed him the bag. Blue house. White porch. Do not let him convince you the Yankees have personally ruined his life. No promises, When Ethan returned 20 minutes later, Hannah was standing behind the counter with an expression he could not read. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. That is clearly something." She wiped an already clean spot on the counter. Most people who need help are not very interested in helping someone else. Ethan looked toward the window. Maybe needing something and having something to give are not opposites. Hannah became still. Then she smiled. Small. Genuine. That was almost wise. Almost. Do not get arrogant. Later that evening, her shift ended beneath a gray sky, threatening more rain. Hannah stepped outside and found Ethan waiting near the corner. "Are you following me now?" "I was going this direction." She looked down the street. "You do not know which direction I am going. That complicates my story." She laughed and started walking toward the bus stop. Ethan fell into step beside her. They passed a laundromat, a hardware store, and a neighborhood bakery closing for the night. Hannah slowed near its window. Inside, trays of bread cooled beneath warm yellow lights. Ethan noticed the way she looked at them. "You like bread?" That might be the least romantic description possible. "I was not trying to be romantic." "Good." She kept walking, but her smile remained. "I bake. Professionally. In a kitchen approximately the size of your coat." She told him about the envelope in her apartment. Not how much was inside, only what it meant. A small bakery someday. 6 tables. Maybe 8. Cinnamon rolls on Sundays. Coffee strong enough to make people forgive Mondays. Ethan listened carefully. He could have changed her life before breakfast. One phone call could secure a storefront, equipment, permits, everything. The thought arrived automatically, shaped by a world where money solved delays. Then he looked at Hannah. She was not asking to be rescued. She was sharing a dream. There was a difference. "What would you call it?" he asked. Hannah looked surprised. "Miller and Main Bakery. There is no Main Street around here. There will be wherever I open it." Ethan laughed softly. At the bus shelter, rain finally began tapping against the plastic roof. Hannah checked the schedule. 8 minutes. They stood side by side, close enough to hear each other breathe between passing cars. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "You just did. Why did you let me into the diner that first night?" Hannah watched the rain. "Because you looked cold. That's simple. Most things are simple before people start explaining them." Ethan looked at her. "You never asked what happened to me." Hannah's expression softened. Everyone deserves one conversation where they do not have to explain why life went wrong. The word silenced him. He had spent years believing kindness was usually an investment disguised as generosity. Hannah expected nothing, not even his story. The bus appeared at the end of the street. Its headlights stretched across the wet pavement. Hannah stepped toward the curb, then turned back. Tomorrow. Ethan should have remembered the experiment. The 7 days. The lie. Instead, he heard himself answer before caution could intervene. Tomorrow. The bus carried Hannah away. Ethan remained beneath the shelter long after the rain had softened, staring at the empty road. For the first time since putting on the worn brown coat, he felt ashamed of the question that had brought him there. He had wanted to discover whether Hannah was capable of loving a man with nothing. He had never considered whether a man hiding everything deserved to be loved at all. Saturday arrived with sunlight, the kind that made the diner windows look cleaner than they were. Ethan came through the door at 11:58 and found Hannah carrying a toolbox toward the kitchen. "You are late," she said. "By what standard?" "The standard where I decided you were fixing our back door today." Ethan took the toolbox from her. "I did not realize I had been promoted." "You have not. Promotions come with money." The back door had been sticking for months. Ethan adjusted the hinges while Hannah stood nearby, pretending not to supervise. When the door finally swung smoothly, she opened and closed it twice. "I am impressed. That sounded painful for you." "I will recover." Their smiles lingered a second longer than usual. It was becoming easier now. Too easy. Ethan had stopped counting the questions he originally planned to answer vaguely. Around Hannah, conversation moved toward ordinary things instead. Bad coffee, baseball, grocery prices, the strange customer who ordered pancakes without syrup and then complained they were dry. Small things. Human things. Near the end of her shift, Hannah checked her phone and frowned. "Problem?" Ethan asked. "My father's ride canceled. He has groceries waiting at the market. I can help. You have already repaired half the diner. Then consider this community service." Robert Miller lived 12 minutes away by bus and another 8 minutes on foot. When Hannah and Ethan reached the small white house, Robert was standing on the porch wearing a cardigan and an expression of theatrical suspicion. So this is the interesting man. Hannah stopped. Dad. Ethan looked at her. Interesting. He misunderstands words. Robert shook Ethan's hand. I understand that one perfectly. The groceries were still at the neighborhood market, so Ethan walked with Robert while Hannah stayed behind to start dinner. Robert moved slowly, but he refused every offer to carry his cane. Ethan respected that immediately. On the way back, Ethan carried 2 paper bags while Robert carried the lightest one. Hannah worries too much, Robert said. She learned that from her mother. She talks about her. Not often. Robert glanced at him. Some people carry love quietly after they lose someone. Ethan said nothing. He understood quiet losses better than he wanted Robert to know. At the house, Hannah had turned a few inexpensive ingredients into chicken soup, toasted bread, and a small apple cake that filled the kitchen with cinnamon. You baked that? Ethan asked. Try not to sound shocked. Robert pointed his spoon at him. Best baker in the county. Dad, possibly the state. Please eat your soup. Ethan laughed, and Hannah rolled her eyes. Dinner lasted nearly 2 hours. No private chef. No polished silver. No conversation about markets or acquisitions. Robert told embarrassing stories about Hannah's childhood. Hannah retaliated with stories about her father falling asleep during baseball games and waking up only to complain about the score. Ethan listened. Then slowly, almost without noticing, he began contributing stories of his own. He told them about growing up outside Pittsburgh, about his mother making pancakes every Sunday, about working summers in his uncle's warehouse. All true. He simply stopped the story before success arrived. Hannah noticed the warmth in his voice when he spoke about those years. You were happy then, she said. Ethan looked at her across the small kitchen table. I think I was. What changed? The room became quieter. Ethan could have answered with one word. Money. Not because money had ruined him, but because eventually he had allowed it to become the first fact everyone knew about him. Life got complicated, he said. Hannah studied him, sensing the closed door, but choosing not to push it. After dinner, Robert disappeared into the living room to watch television. Hannah washed dishes while Ethan dried them. Their shoulders occasionally touched in the narrow kitchen. Neither moved away quickly. You do this better than I expected, Hannah said. Dry dishes? Being normal. Ethan's hand stopped around a plate. What does that mean? I do not know. She looked at him. Sometimes you seem like you are visiting your own life. He forced a smile. That sounds philosophical for someone holding a sponge. Hannah flicked a few drops of water toward him. Ethan stared at the spots on his shirt. Did you just do that? There are no witnesses. From the living room, Robert called. I witnessed it. Hannah covered her face, laughing. Ethan laughed with her, and for one dangerous moment, he forgot there was anything to confess. Later, Hannah walked him to the porch. The evening air was cool, carrying the smell of wet grass, and someone grilling 2 houses away. Thank you, she said, for helping Dad. I liked him. He likes you too. Unfortunately, that means he will ask increasingly personal questions. I will prepare. Hannah looked down, then back at him. You know, you do not have to earn every meal I give you. Ethan's expression changed. I know. Do you? He wanted to tell her then. About the hotel room. The company. The Swiss watch locked away. The 7 days that had begun as a test, and somehow become the first honest week he had lived in years. Instead, he said, I like being useful. Hannah's eyes softened. Then tomorrow, come early. I am baking before my shift. For the diner? For me. She smiled. I need someone brave enough to test cinnamon rolls. Ethan stepped down from the porch. That sounds dangerous. You will survive. He walked toward the corner, then looked back. Hannah was still standing beneath the porch light. She lifted one hand. Ethan did the same. That night, alone in his modest rented room, he realized something had changed. He no longer wanted to know whether Hannah would choose him without his fortune. He wanted Sunday morning. Flour on the counter. Cinnamon in the air. Her father complaining about baseball. Hannah laughing in a kitchen too small for 2 people. Ethan had spent years believing a bigger life would feel fuller. Hannah was quietly showing him the opposite. And that frightened him, because the more real their ordinary moments became, the less innocent his secret was. Sunday morning smelled like cinnamon before the sun had fully reached the diner windows. Ethan arrived at 7:10 and found Hannah behind the counter with flour on her cheek and 3 trays of cinnamon rolls cooling beside the register. You are late, she said. You never gave me a time. That sounds like an excuse. That sounds like poor management. Hannah handed him a warm roll. Careful. Criticizing the baker before tasting the product is dangerous. Ethan took one bite and became quiet. Hannah folded her arms. Well, I am considering how much honesty our friendship can survive. Her eyes narrowed. Ethan, he smiled. It is incredible. She tried not to look pleased. Failed. For the next hour, they worked side by side before the diner opened. Hannah shaped dough while Ethan cleaned bowls. Flour covered the counter. An old radio played softly from the kitchen. Nothing about the morning should have mattered to a man accustomed to private dining rooms and executive meetings. Yet Ethan found himself wishing time would slow down. Hannah talked about Miller and Main Bakery as if it already existed. She described warm lights, wooden tables, fresh bread near the entrance, and a community board where neighbors could post job openings or ask for help. You have planned everything, Ethan said. Dreams are cheaper when they stay on paper. That does not mean they stay there forever. Hannah looked at him. You really believe that? Ethan almost answered from instinct. He knew investors, property owners, contractors. He knew exactly how quickly he could turn her paper dream into a real address. Instead, he said, I believe you could do it. Something changed in her expression. Not excitement. Something quieter. Being believed in. By 9, customers began arriving. Ethan stayed, helping Frank carry supplies and stacking clean cups when Hannah became busy. Near noon, Robert appeared and claimed his usual booth. Still here? He asked Ethan. Apparently. Robert looked toward Hannah. Good. Hannah heard him. Dad, I ordered coffee, not commentary. The three of them laughed, and Ethan felt the lie inside him grow heavier. That afternoon, when Hannah's shift ended, they walked without deciding where they were going. The sky was clear. Families moved through the neighborhood park. A little league game was ending on the field nearby, parents folding chairs while children chased one another across the grass. Hannah bought 2 lemonades from a sidewalk stand before Ethan could object. Now you owe me again, she said. My debt is becoming unmanageable. I have flexible payment plans. They sat on a bench beneath an old maple tree. For a while, neither spoke. Ethan watched ordinary Sunday life move around them. Nobody knew his name. Nobody wanted a meeting. Nobody checked a stock price before speaking to him. Beside him, Hannah stretched her tired feet and drank lemonade through a paper straw. Can I tell you something embarrassing? She asked. Absolutely. I almost did not invite you this morning. Why? Hannah looked toward the baseball field. Because I am starting to look forward to seeing you. Ethan's smile disappeared. She continued before courage left her. And I do not know anything about you. There it was. The door he had been avoiding. You know some things. I know you grew up near Pittsburgh. I know your mother made pancakes. I know you can repair chairs, but somehow look suspicious holding basic tools. He laughed softly. Hannah did not. I know you disappear every night and never tell me where. I know you understand business better than you pretend to. Yesterday, you explained why Dad's prescription discount plan was structured badly in about 30 seconds. Ethan looked down at his hands. Who were you before this? The sounds of the park seemed to move farther away. He could tell her. Right now? Ethan Cole. Founder. Billionaire. Hotel room. 7-day experiment. Every fact waited behind his teeth. I made some money once, he said carefully. Hannah waited. Then things became complicated. Did you lose it? Ethan looked at her. One honest word could end the lie. Instead, fear answered first. Something like that. Hannah nodded slowly. She believed him, and that hurt more than suspicion would have. You do not have to tell me everything today, she said. Just do not make me feel foolish for trusting you. Ethan's chest tightened. I would never want that. The words were sincere. That was the worst part. Hannah turned toward him. Then what do you want? He looked at the woman who had opened a locked door because he looked cold, who gave without humiliating, who dreamed in 6 tables and Sunday cinnamon rolls. This, he said quietly. Whatever this is. Hannah's eyes softened. Their hands rested inches apart on the bench. Ethan moved his closer. Slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. Her fingers touched his, then remained there. Later, as they walked back toward the diner, another light rain began falling. They stopped beneath the same narrow awning where they had first met. Hannah looked up at him and smiled. You bring terrible weather. I thought you liked rain. I like being indoors when it rains. Ethan laughed. Then the laughter faded. Neither moved. Hannah's expression became quiet. Ethan leaned closer, slowly enough for the moment to remain a question. Hannah answered by staying. Their first kiss was brief, gentle, almost shy. When they separated, Hannah smiled in a way Ethan had never seen before. Tomorrow, she whispered. Ethan should have told her everything. Instead, he smiled back. Tomorrow. Hannah walked toward her bus with rain shining beneath the streetlights. Ethan remained under the awning, watching until she disappeared from view. In his pocket was the key card to a hotel suite Hannah did not know existed. Across town waited a tailored suit, a silent boardroom, and a Swiss watch locked inside a safe. The 7 days were almost over. Ethan had begun the week afraid that someone might love him for his money. Now he was terrified Hannah might stop loving him because of his lie. Monday morning arrived with a truth Ethan had postponed for 7 days. At 7:45, he stood inside his hotel suite wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. The worn brown coat lay across the back of a chair. His Swiss watch rested beside his phone, both objects looking strangely foreign after a week without them. Daniel Mercer stood near the window, holding a tablet filled with messages Ethan had ignored. The board meeting starts at 9, Daniel said. 3 investors flew in last night. Your legal team has been calling me every hour. Whatever you were trying to prove, I think 7 days is enough. Ethan stared at the brown coat. I found someone. Daniel lowered the tablet. Someone who does not know who you are. Ethan said nothing. Daniel understood. Then you did not find what you were looking for. You created a problem. I am telling her today. Before or after she sees your name on a building? Ethan looked away. At 8:30, Hannah was pouring coffee for Mr. Patterson when Denise leaned against the counter. You are smiling. I smile every day. Not like that. Hannah reached for a stack of menus. Table 3 needs silverware. Denise grinned. His name is Ethan, right? Hannah tried to hide her smile and failed. Table 3, Denise. The morning passed slowly. 10 o'clock. 11. Noon. Hannah placed a white mug at the window table anyway. At 12:23, the chair remained empty. By 1, the coffee had gone cold. Hannah told herself he owed her nothing. They had never made plans beyond one word beneath the rain. Tomorrow. Still, every time the bell chimed, she looked up. At 2:15, a black sedan stopped across the street. Hannah noticed because it seemed completely out of place beside the diner's faded sign and crowded parking lot. A man in a dark suit stepped out and opened the rear door. Then Ethan emerged. Hannah stopped moving. For one confused second, her mind refused to connect the man on the sidewalk with the man who had dried dishes in her father's kitchen. His hair was neatly styled. His shoes were polished. The charcoal suit looked made for him. On his wrist was a silver Swiss watch that caught the afternoon light. Denise followed Hannah's gaze. Wait, is that him? Ethan looked through the diner window. Their eyes met. No smile came this time. Hannah slowly set down the coffee pot. Ethan crossed the street alone. The bell above the door chimed. The diner continued around them, but Hannah heard almost nothing. Hannah. She looked at his suit, then his watch, then the sedan waiting outside. Who are you? Ethan swallowed. My name is Ethan Cole. I know your name. Not all of it. He took a breath. I founded Cole Meridian Logistics. I am still its chief executive officer. Hannah stared at him. Recognition arrived slowly, followed by disbelief. She had seen that company name on trucks, warehouses, business headlines. You have money. Yes. How much? Ethan hesitated. That hesitation answered more clearly than a number. Hannah's face changed. Oh, one quiet syllable. Somehow it hurt him more than anger. I can explain. Then explain. Ethan glanced around. Can we go somewhere private? No. You were comfortable lying to me here. You can tell me the truth here. He accepted that. I wanted to know what it felt like to meet people who did not know my name. I had relationships where I could never tell whether someone cared about me or what came with me. So I gave myself 7 days. No assistant. No expensive clothes. No public identity. Hannah's eyes remained fixed on him. And you chose me. I did not plan that. But once I helped you, you kept coming back. Because I liked you. At first, Ethan became silent. Hannah nodded as if she had received the answer. At first, you were testing me. Hannah, it stopped being that. When? Almost immediately. Then why did you keep lying? He had rehearsed explanations all morning. None survived her question. I was afraid. Of what? Losing this. Hannah looked toward the white mug waiting at the window table. You wanted to know whether I would care about you without money. Yes. So every cup of coffee, every meal, every conversation with my father, every time I trusted you, you were learning something true about me while I was learning something false about you. The things I told you about my childhood were true. My mother, Pittsburgh, the warehouse, all of it. You told me pieces that made the lie easier to believe. Ethan stepped closer, then stopped when Hannah's expression told him not to. What I feel for you is real. Her eyes shone, but her voice remained calm. That is what makes this worse. Ethan reached inside his coat and removed nothing. No check, no card. He had almost brought an envelope that morning containing enough money to secure Hannah's bakery. Now he understood how insulting it would have been. Hannah untied the small gray scarf from around her neck. It was the one Ethan had lent her the evening the temperature dropped, one of the few inexpensive things he had purchased for his disguise. She folded it carefully and placed it beside the cold coffee. Keep it, he whispered. I cannot. Why? Hannah looked directly at him. Because I do not know which memories were gifts and which ones were part of your experiment. Ethan's face fell. I am sorry. I believe you. That surprised him. Hannah took a slow breath. But being sorry does not make trust come back on command. She picked up the coffee pot and turned toward the counter. Ethan remained still. Hannah. She stopped without facing him. You dressed like a poor man to find out whether I was good enough for you. Her voice softened. Did you ever wonder whether the real you was good enough for me? No one in Ethan's world had ever asked him that question. Not his board. Not his attorneys. Not the people impressed by his name. Hannah walked back to work. Ethan stood beside the untouched mug as the coffee inside it cooled. 7 days earlier, he had removed his watch because he wanted to become invisible. Now it sat heavily on his wrist, reminding him that time could measure many things, but it could not tell him how long forgiveness would take. For the first 3 weeks, Ethan did exactly what Hannah had not expected him to do. Nothing. No flowers arrived at the diner. No black sedan waited outside after her shift. No expensive gift appeared at her father's house. He did not call the owner and offer to buy the building. He did not send a check for Miller and Main Bakery. He simply stayed away. Hannah told herself she was relieved. Then she discovered that relief and absence could feel strangely similar. Life returned to its familiar rhythm. Coffee at sunrise. Orders shouted through the kitchen window. Robert complaining about baseball. $20 into the bakery envelope whenever she could manage it. Some weeks, 10. Hannah kept moving because ordinary life had always been good at demanding the next thing before the heart finished understanding the last one. Ethan returned to Cole Meridian Logistics, but something there had changed too. The 42nd floor office looked larger than he remembered and somehow less important. His calendar filled again. Meetings, contracts, flights, decisions involving numbers Hannah would have found ridiculous. Yet he began noticing things he had once walked past. The security guard who worked 2 jobs. The receptionist who remembered everyone's birthday. The warehouse supervisor who had been requesting flexible hours for employees caring for elderly parents. Before Hannah, Ethan had believed leadership meant seeing the entire machine. She had taught him to notice the people inside it. He changed policies quietly. No speeches. No press release. No story about personal transformation. When Daniel asked whether any of it was about Hannah, Ethan answered, "It is about who I should have been before I met her." 6 months passed. October turned the trees gold and red. Hannah's bakery envelope grew slowly, helped by weekend orders she baked from Robert's kitchen. Birthday cakes, dinner rolls, cinnamon rolls that neighbors began requesting. By name, she was still far from opening a storefront, but the dream no longer lived only on a folded receipt. One Saturday morning, Robert asked Hannah to help at a community kitchen connected to his church. "They are short on volunteers," he said. "You mean you volunteered me? I raised you. I am allowed 1 or 2 administrative privileges." Hannah arrived shortly before 9 wearing jeans, sneakers, and an old sweatshirt. The room smelled like coffee, onions, and fresh bread. Volunteers moved between long tables preparing meals for families from the neighborhood. Hannah tied on an apron and carried a box toward the kitchen. Then she heard laughter near the sinks. Familiar laughter. She stopped. Ethan stood with his sleeves rolled to his elbows, washing a mountain of metal trays. No suit. No watch she could see. No audience. An older volunteer beside him said something Hannah could not hear, and Ethan laughed again before returning to the dishes. Hannah looked at her father. Robert looked innocent. Too innocent. "Did you know?" she whispered. No what? Dad, I knew he volunteers here. Hannah stared at him. Since when? Robert considered it. About 4 months. Her eyes returned to Ethan. For months. He had not known she would come today. He had not arranged the room. He had not created another test. For once, Hannah was seeing Ethan when Ethan did not know she was watching. He noticed her several minutes later. His hand stopped beneath the running water. Surprise crossed his face. Then something gentler. Hi, Hannah. Hi. That was all. No dramatic apology. No demand for another chance. They worked for nearly 2 hours on opposite sides of the room before circumstances placed them together slicing bread. Ethan kept his attention on the cutting board. Your father says your cinnamon rolls have become famous. Hannah glanced toward Robert. My father has a flexible relationship with the word famous. Ethan smiled. Silence returned. It was not comfortable, but it was honest. Why are you here? Hannah finally asked. Ethan set down the knife. Daniel's mother volunteered here for years. I started coming after. He stopped. After us. After I realized. I had spent a week pretending to have nothing without understanding what it means to actually need something. Hannah studied him. You could write a check. I do. He looked toward the sinks. But money cannot wash trays. A small smile almost escaped her. That might be the least billionaire sentence you have ever said. I have been practicing. She looked down at the bread. Why did you never come back? Ethan answered immediately. Because you asked for truth, and I had already taken enough choices away from you. Forgiving me had to be yours. Hannah had imagined many answers during those 6 months. None sounded like that. I was angry, she said. You had every right. I still might be. You have every right to that too. You are making this difficult. Ethan gave a quiet laugh. I thought agreeing with you would help. It does not. Their eyes met, and for the first time in 6 months, Hannah smiled at him without meaning to. Ethan did not move closer. He did not mistake the smile for forgiveness. That mattered. When the shift ended, volunteers began stacking chairs. Ethan reached for his coat. Hannah watched him for a moment. Do you have somewhere to be? He looked at her carefully. Not until this afternoon. Hannah picked up 2 paper cups from the coffee station. She filled them and handed him one. Ethan took a sip, then raised an eyebrow. Cold. Hannah looked toward the door. There is a place 3 blocks from here that serves it hot. He understood the invitation, but he did not rush it. Are you sure? Hannah thought about the diner, the lie, the rain, and the 6 months in which he had apparently learned to change without asking her to witness it. No, she said, but I am willing to have 1 cup of coffee and find out. They walked outside together. No disguise. No experiment. No promise that the past had disappeared. Ethan was still a billionaire. Hannah was still a waitress saving $20 at a time toward a bakery. Nothing about their lives had magically become equal. But as they walked side by side beneath the October trees, Hannah understood that equality had never required them to possess the same things. It required both of them to stand in the truth. And for the first time since they met, Ethan had nothing left to pretend. The coffee shop was 3 blocks away, but Hannah and Ethan took nearly 20 minutes to reach it. Neither was in a hurry. They talked about small things first. Robert's baseball complaints. Daniel's terrible habit of scheduling breakfast meetings. The cinnamon rolls Hannah had started selling on weekends. It was not reconciliation. Not yet. It was something more careful. A beginning without a disguise. Over the next several months, they learned each other again. Ethan took Hannah to dinner, but not to places where a reservation required knowing someone important. Hannah invited him to Robert's house, where Ethan was expected to wash dishes regardless of his net worth. They went grocery shopping. They argued over which coffee to buy. They spent Sunday mornings testing recipes in Robert's kitchen and Wednesday evenings walking through the neighborhood after Hannah finished her shift. Sometimes Ethan arrived in a tailored suit. Sometimes in jeans with his sleeves rolled up. Hannah discovered that both versions were the same man when he stopped trying to control what she saw. Ethan discovered something too. Hannah did not dislike his wealth. She disliked the idea that it should make decisions for her. When he offered to finance Miller and Main Bakery, she said no. Ethan accepted the answer. 3 months later, Hannah qualified for a small business loan after combining her savings with the income from her growing weekend orders. Ethan helped her read the lease only after she asked. He found problems in 2 clauses, explained them, and then handed the papers back. Your decision, he said. Hannah smiled. You are learning. Slowly. Miller and Main Bakery opened the following spring on a corner 4 blocks from the diner. 6 tables. Then Hannah squeezed in 2 more. Warm wooden shelves lined the walls. A community board hung beside the entrance. Cinnamon rolls appeared every Sunday morning, and the coffee was exactly as strong as Hannah had promised. Robert cut the ribbon with kitchen scissors because Hannah had forgotten to buy ceremonial ones. Ethan stood near the back, applauding with everyone else. He had invested nothing in the business. Yet when Hannah saw him there, pride shining across his face, she understood that support did not always mean providing the money. Sometimes it meant respecting the distance another person wanted to walk on her own. A year after the bakery opened, Ethan proposed after closing time. No restaurant full of strangers. No photographer hiding nearby. No enormous diamond meant to turn love into a headline. Hannah was wiping flour from the counter when he placed a small ring beside the same style of thick white coffee mug they had used at the diner. "The first time I met you," he said, "I wanted proof that someone could love me without knowing what I had." Hannah looked at him, already fighting a smile. That was a terrible plan. Historically terrible. She laughed. Ethan took her hand. "Then you taught me that the question was never whether someone could love me without my money. The question was whether I could love someone without trying to control the outcome." His voice softened. "I cannot promise you a simple life. I can promise you an honest one. Hannah Miller, will you marry me?" She let him wait 3 long seconds. "Yes." Ethan laughed with relief, and Hannah wrapped her arms around him. Their kiss was warm and unhurried, carrying none of the uncertainty of the one beneath the diner awning. This time, there was no secret waiting for morning. They married the following October in Robert's backyard beneath strings of warm lights. Daniel stood beside Ethan. Denise cried before the ceremony even started. Robert walked Hannah across the grass, then whispered that her mother would have loved the bakery, the wedding, and especially the man who finally learned how to dry dishes properly. Their marriage did not become a fairy tale, because real marriages rarely do. Ethan still traveled for work. Hannah still woke before sunrise on bakery days. They disagreed about schedules, holidays, and whether 8 decorative pillows were 7 too many. They learned to apologize before pride hardened. They protected Friday evenings whenever they could. On difficult weeks, Ethan came home and baked badly. On exhausting mornings, Hannah left coffee beside his laptop and kissed his forehead before opening the bakery. 2 years after their wedding, they bought a modest house close enough for Robert to visit without announcing himself, which he frequently did. On their anniversary, Ethan and Hannah returned to the old diner. They sat at the window table. Hannah ordered 2 coffees. When the mugs arrived, Ethan took a sip and made a thoughtful face. "Cold?" she asked. He looked at the woman across from him, the woman who now knew his strengths, his failures, his fortune, his fears, and the ordinary man beneath all of them. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Not anymore." Hannah smiled and intertwined her fingers with his. Outside, rain began touching the windows, just as it had years before. Ethan had once hidden everything he owned because he thought love could only be proven when wealth disappeared. Hannah had shown him something far more difficult and far more lasting. Love was not finding someone who wanted you when you had nothing. It was finding someone before whom you could hide nothing, and choosing each other anyway.